Hello and welcome to a bonus episode of the Wisden Cricket Weekly podcast. Loads to get through today. We've got one of the great county championship games at Taunton, an England test squad, the start of an England-Australia series, finals day, a farcical washout in India, Rishabh Pant's test return, and an interview with Aussie all-rounder Cam Green. I'm Yas Rana, and with me today are Phil Walker and Katya Witney at a very downbeat Kia Oval after yesterday's events. We'll get to it later, but I genuinely think that's one of the best games of cricket ever played. Like 2019 Headingley levels, genuinely.
On that, by the way, just walking into the ground today, Stewie already inspecting the pitch.
Yes.
Game still 3 days out. Him and Big Lee studying every last bit of grass.
Yeah, we'll get to that later. Let's start with the test squad. England have named a 17-man group for the Pakistan tour that starts in less than a month. The headlines are: Chris Woakes is back for an away tour for the first time since March 2022. Jordan Cox is preferred to Dan Lawrence as the squad's spare batter. Bryden Cast, as well as Josh Hull, are included in the fast bowling group. Rahan Ahmed and Jack Leach are back supporting Shoaib Bashir. Phil, a lot of people can't believe that England have gone back to Woakes for an overseas
A lot of people believe
tour.
a lot of things, don't they?
He averages more than 50 away, about 21 at home. Previous regimes have been seduced by his record at home, taking him on away tours, and it hasn't worked. Is it a madness to have him back?
No, I don't think so. Do you?
No, I don't.
No.
I think he's a more complete bowler than he has been previously when he's gone away.
It seems like he's got it on a string more consistently than ever before. His accuracy is evident, and while obviously there's issues of pace through the air, if you consistently put it exactly where you want to put it, and he has all the nous and knowledge now of 10 years in the top class game, then you can be useful. You saw it 2 years ago when they went out there before. Ollie Robinson bowled a similar kind of pace, and he was very useful doing a containing job in a team that with the bat attacks like mad, and with the ball has that mixture of thrust and solidity. He clearly has a very, very key role to. If you just look at it in isolation, forget about the surfaces or sideline surfaces for a minute. If you look at it in isolation, he has an absolutely essential role in what is still quite a raw and nascent pace attack. And to jettison him when he's now made it clear that he wants a part of this would, to me, be nonsensical, because clearly across 3 test matches back to back, and very much in the modern game as well, which is a front foot thrusting kind of modern game, you need somebody who can provide that kind of control, smarts, experience, a bit of old world knowledge, and someone who can land it on a sixpence time after time, which is where he is at now with his game. I also think, for what it's worth, that there has been a slight shift in his own self-value in recent times. I think he's quite enjoying being the main man. He's enjoying being the grown-up in the team. And you can sense that, I think, last summer or this summer, in the way that he's conducted himself, the way that he has even celebrated the wickets that he's taken. There's a bit of an aura around him now. And he doesn't have to prove anything either. You know,
Does he not overseas?
Sorry, I mean, as an England cricketer, right? He doesn't necessarily need this to have done everything that he would have set out to do. You know, his record is seriously good now. You know, he has proper numbers. He's not just a cricketer who was thankful for a game or two for England here and there. And I think it's a good thing if he feels that there's an itch still to scratch away from home. I think it's a good thing. The bottom line, right? You're playing 3 test matches in 2.5, 3 weeks, then you need options. His ability, even with not just obviously with a new ball that's only going to swing for 15, 20 overs, but in the middle overs as well, he can provide control. He can provide. He's a brilliant bowler of off cutters, for example. Right now, you know, if the pitch is flat and Babar Azam is going well, then you pack an offside field, or you bowl to certain plans, or you bowl 4 or 5 leg side field, and you have 2 men at mid wicket, and you can put the brakes on. He has the quality to do that. He's not going to blow you away. He's not going to take 6 for 60 anywhere, but he provides an option, I think, that they're going to be keen to utilise here and there. And it might be that he has he has a bit more to offer, especially when you get to New Zealand with a bit more green on the tracks, right? You know, if Southey can do it in New Zealand, then there's no reason why Chris Woakes can't do it in New Zealand. Australia is another story. We can't have it both ways. We can't like dismiss the here and now and then criticise when we only focus on Australia. There's some test matches to win now, and there's some team building to do now. And anyone who suggests that his work is automatically done, to me, I don't quite understand that attitude.
Katya, how do you see it?
I don't know. I'm probably a bit more hesitant about it than Phil is, but I think you've also got to think about an experience point of view. The rest of that seam attack has, I think, one overseas cap between them, taking out Ben Stokes without Chris Woakes. And it's also worth looking at just how different, it's a completely different bowling attack than last time they were in Pakistan. They've gone with a completely different approach. Last time you had Anderson and Robinson, who were brilliant at kind of hammering a length, consistency all day. And they don't have bowlers who are the same type of bowlers, particularly as Robinson, in the attack that they've picked. And Woakes, from an experience point of view, from the type of bowler he is, from a consistency point of view, I think he's probably the way to go for this series. I don't think this series necessarily has to speak to whether he's going to be a part of England's plans into the future abroad. But I think for the here and now, like Phil says, it's probably the best way to go. I'm not expecting him to be suddenly a transformed overseas presence, but I think it's important that he is there. I also just don't think having a bowler at home and not away works, or even a player. I don't think having a player for home series and not having them for away series works. Because like Woakes, when you have an incredible summer, it's then really, really hard to not pick them going away. And if you think of the role that Woakes plays in the side as well, we've spoken about it before, it's really hard to fill the kind of role that he does as such a good number 8, and also someone who, you know, lands on a string, takes wickets. And over the Sri Lanka series, England did look light on their batting. They really did, when you had Woakes coming in at 7 and Atkinson at 8. And I think he plays a really important role for that.
I mean, that's a good point, actually. You know, ideally, you don't have him as high as 7. But if the pitches are going to be flattish and slowish and sluggish, then him at number 8 becomes a very useful player. Obviously, if he's going to get bombed on quick ones, then he's not so useful with the bat. But in a side that values being multi-format cricketers, then he absolutely brings something with the bat there. I think that's a good added element of value that he brings.
I think it's also worth saying that the pitches could be very different from what England faced in Pakistan last time. Last time the pitches were just flat, and if you look at what test pitches have been recently in Pakistan, they have been a bit more seamer friendly. And England, last time they packed their lineup with spin bowling all-rounders when they picked Livingston and Jacks and Rahan. They haven't gone the same way this time around. They've picked Rahan and they've picked Leach. They haven't picked Tom Hartley. They've picked Shahab Bashir. They haven't got those spin bowling all-rounders, and they need to have some difference in there if that's the balance that they're going to use.
Yeah, I broadly agree with both of you on Woakes. I think just because he's not done it before doesn't mean he definitely won't be able to do it again. And I guess from how you were describing what he's likely to do in Pakistan, no doubt about his skill with a new ball. It's when the ball is old, can he bowl really dry? Can he still be a threat? So going back to Pakistan,
I'd absolutely back him to do that.
But I'm just comparing him to Anderson, let's say. Woakes has always been a slightly more attacking bowler than Anderson. He always bowls a slightly fuller length, looking to draw batters forward, and that just means you concede slightly more runs in that search. Comparing to Robinson's control of the reverse swinging ball was extraordinary on that tour, and such a big part of their win was Anderson, Robinson, and Wood, who did something completely different. They were all so effective. Those 3 guys all averaged about 20, and went at about 2 and over on that tour. And I think, you know, we obviously talked a lot about Anderson this summer. And I increasingly think that towards the end of his career, he was a much better bowler away from home than he was at home. And I was looking at the numbers. His numbers away from home were totally ridiculous in his last decade of his career. 136 wickets at 23, an economy of 2.34. I think England are going to miss Anderson much more on this tour than at any point they did in the home summer just gone. I think more broadly, I know Woakes is the headline because there's a story around his career overseas, but I'm worried about that attack. I think, as you say, it's incredibly inexperienced. There are a lot of good things that we saw in this summer, but as you say, completely different profiles to the guys who had success there in 2022. And Anderson Robinson was so skillful and Wood was so quick. I think there are a lot of guys who've got a lot of good tools, but I think I don't think it's a guarantee that those guys will have success, even though they did this summer.
I think, like, particularly missing Wood. If you think about the modus operandi they went on last time, Anderson and Robinson ground them down. They didn't give away anything. They were banging into the pitch. They were really good with the old ball. And it didn't necessarily matter that the spinners that England had weren't necessarily their best spinners on that tour, because the pace attack was so good. And you had Wood to come on and be used in short bursts. No one is as quick as Wood, and no one is going to be as good as Wood overseas would have been. It's almost kind of crept up on, I guess, me, that the team is just so different from what it was 2 years ago now. I hadn't really stopped and thought about it till I looked at that squad and was like, wow, there's actually
only 8 players who are touring this time who went 2 years ago.
It's only really the top 5, if Stokes is fit to be in it, that are the same as it was a few years ago. I forgot that Ollie Pope also kept in the first match of that series, which seems like a long time ago. But it is an incredibly different bowling attack. And the bowling attack, as much as the headline from that series was England scoring 500 on day 1 at Rawalpindi and Harry Brook and all that lot, the bowlers were the reason they won that series, not necessarily the batters.
Yeah,
I think the point you made earlier as well about the pitches is a good one. I think it's probably unlikely that they'll prepare similar kind of flat ones to what they saw 2 years ago, because England just come and pulverise you. On flat ones, they just beat you up. And I think you'd have to be a pretty optimistic Pakistan fan to fancy the home team against that batting lineup on a flat one, because of the way that they play. And so to balance it up a little bit, I imagine that they'll try and get the pitches to spin a bit more, and that there should be a little bit more for the seamers as well. And I think that would probably be the smartest way to go if they are curating their own pitches and they have proper say over them.
Their head coach, Jason Gillespie, said he was really happy with the pitch used for the second test against Bangladesh. They lost it.
With 26 for 6, Bangladesh.
But seamers did all the work. Young Bangladesh seamers who haven't done a lot in international cricket, who look really good, did really well.
So in that respect then, a Woakes player comes back into the fray a little bit more. It becomes more persuasive to think that he would be involved. It also, for my money, it becomes more persuasive to have Ollie Robinson in there as well. I don't know what's happened there, but he's clearly not featuring at all. He's not fancied at the moment. Josh Hull is your point of difference. Josh Hull is your plan for the future. I don't have an issue with him being in the side necessarily, but if they were going to take that number, then I would have taken Robinson for Hull personally. There is pace in Cast, there is pace in Atkinson, there is enough pace in Potts as well. And if the pitches are going to be, in Stone as well. So, they're all fast mediums. They're not outright Mark Wood fast, but then only Mark Wood is. So there's 3 quicks in there, and there's 3 or 4 medium fasts as well. I think that's fine. But I think Robinson's traits, and he's fit and he's in shape, and he's constantly reminding you of his quality for Sussex, but it's just that they're not looking there at the moment.
I think they've moved on.
Yeah, perhaps they have. Perhaps they have.
Reading between the lines, Rob Key did an interview on Sky during the Lord's Test, and he talked in quite certain and final terms about making decisions on players. And there are not that many players they've moved on from, right? And I think you look at the squad. We'll get on to Jordan Cox in a bit. It does sound like they have made final decisions on players.
It is surprising, though, objectively surprising, because I don't think he did a massive amount wrong in the Ashes, and then he got injured.
I think they don't trust his ability to be fit, basically, and I think there's a nut.
But that in itself is a flimsy excuse, flimsy reason to turn your back on a cricketer that's still only in their 20s. If Australia had turned their back on Pat Cummins inside the first 5 years of his career, I'm not comparing the two, but you know what I mean. If Pakistan turned their back on Nasim Shah because he's struggling for fitness, I find that a spurious reason if that is the case.
Well, there's always been an undercurrent of the Robinson discussion is that he should have more of the blame for his fitness problems than other players who are not fit, I think, and I think that's been the issue from England's point of view. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but I think that's how they see it. Going back 2 years ago, Robinson was the number 4 ranked bowler in the world 2 months after the Pakistan tour. I think all the talk about looking to the future, a guy who should be in the prime of his career, not being part of the setup right now, I think is, again, in the same way that I think England will miss Anderson more this winter than they did this summer, I think that would be the same for Robinson as well.
I think there's a bit more at play with that story, that particular story. I think it's always a delicate ecosystem, a team set up. my sense is if you do a little bit more outside extracurricular stuff than they prefer you to, and if you talk loosely on podcasts and so on, then I don't think that goes down particularly well, genuinely. And look, if he was the best bowler in the world, it wouldn't matter a jot. But I do think those kinds of factors do play a little part in it as well.
Katya, Dan Lawrence has been dropped after failing to impress up top against Sri Lanka. Is that harsh?
Yeah, I feel really sorry for him, actually. When he was talked about it on Monday, but saw him walk off the pitch at the Oval after getting out, he genuinely looked so sad. And he probably knew by that point that he wasn't going to Pakistan. And he was asked to do a job after hanging around with the side for 18 months. He was asked to do a job he'd never done before. And understandably made a bit of a mess of it. And I think he would have known the scale of the opportunity that he let slip. I'm not taking the blame off him for letting that go, but he was given a rough hand. Especially given how integral that opening partnership has been to England's approach over the last 2 years. And you would have thought, purely from he's shown in the county championship like how effective he can be as a spinner. Would you not want someone batting in the middle order who can also bowl the kind of spin that Dan Lawrence can in Pakistan? Would you not want that kind of a player that we know he can be in Pakistan in a position that suits him better? I understand why they've dropped him looking at the numbers, but it does seem like he's been a bit hard done by when that opportunity in Pakistan would have been an opportunity perfect for him. It's all very well saying we back the abilities of the player over the position, but you've got to give the player the right environment to thrive in, and you've got to give them the best opportunity to show themselves at their best. And I don't think he's been given that by being left on hold for 18 months to be the spare batter in whatever position and then rammed into the opener's spot when he's not got any experience doing that.
I think that's all fair. I think it's simultaneously harsh, but also fair enough. I think England think that Jordan Cox is a better player, and I think that's fair enough for them to think that. I also think part of it that comes into the equation, which we haven't actually talked about on the podcast, is that Jamie Smith is expected to miss at least some, if not all, of the New Zealand tour for the birth of his first child. So it is likely that Jordan Cox will come in and take the gloves at some point this year. So if you know he's going to play a test match in New Zealand, it makes sense for him to go.
Who had Jordan Cox on their Bairstow or Folkes alternative bingo card?
But I also, there's a point as well that last time when they went to Pakistan, there was obviously the Jennings-Duckett thing where they had a spare top order bat. If Crawley's finger, or thumb is it, finger, whatever digit he's broken, if that, I know they've said that he's made really good progress, but if that doesn't heal in time, or if one of them gets injured, Jordan Cox is going to be opening the batting, probably, right, in this squad. And it just, I kind of think you need to be learning your lessons a little bit from what happened to Dan Lawrence and other times that they've put players in positions where they haven't thrived. It's a bit different in Pakistan because the conditions are so different. Opening the batting in England is up there with the toughest jobs in cricket, right? But I still think it's a little bit like this player over position kind of mentality has gone slightly far, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we talked about it before Lawrence was picked, and Brendan McCullum was literally someone who moved all over the place as a player. Zach Crawley's raw materials, right, are not that of a classical opener. Ben Duckett basically never opened the batting in the 2 years before he was picked to be an opener. I think it was like, if we think you're a good enough player to play for our team, we think you can do it. And also, it's just 3 test matches. Just because he didn't get a big score doesn't mean Dan Lawrence is totally incapable of scoring big runs as an opening batter. And I think it's also, if they're constructing squads for tours down the line, they need to work out if Lawrence was capable of being someone who could open the batting if they need him to. And it's not the worst thing in the world that they've got an answer to that. Phil, what do you make of the decision?
I think Cox has got a better technique than Dan Lawrence. And Lawrence has had numerous chances in various positions against some really, really good sides and some middling sides, and he's still not made a test match 100. And what we saw this summer was confirmation of the suspicion that he's not a test match number 5 or 6 even. The thing is, what we saw, he made 2 30s at Lords. He made a 30 and a 20 at the Oval. I can't remember how he got on in the second test match. I think he got 1 low score. No, sorry, 30 and 30 in the first test. Lords was the second, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So the point is, he made starts, but the way that he got out, with the exception of that chaotic and rather sad final innings, the way that he got out betrayed the problems that he has outside off stump, right?
Which is an issue batting 5.
And it's an issue wherever you bat. Exactly that. It's an issue wherever you bat. It's an issue against the new ball. It's an issue against a reverse swinging ball. It's an issue against the second new ball. It's an issue against any good bowlers. They will just hang it outside off stump and bait you. And because of the vagaries of his technique, he's going to get found out. And that's what happened. I think I totally agree with what you're saying, that he was in a way set up to fail. But he did get over that initial bump in a number of the knocks. And then we saw the fallibilities come through at the fore again. That final innings was really hard to watch because you saw, I mean, he's always been a very sort of human cricketer. You see the character of the bloke really flow through in his game, and that final innings, I found that really, really difficult to watch. I wish he'd had a bit more self-respect. I wish he'd backed himself a little bit more. Sometimes it looks like it's a surfeit of confidence. That wasn't. That was the opposite. And so he thought the only way I can get through this is to play like a tail ender, to run at the opening bowlers and to hope for the best. And he got one out the screws, down the ground, and then shock horror. Well, in fact, even more heartbreakingly, he absolutely lacerated a cut shot right out the screws. Takes 10 from 2 to get into the 30s. And you think, okay, right, you've chanced your arm to try and get back into form. That's logical, that's fair. Back yourself. Respect the game and yourself. And instead, he just ran down the pitch again, nicks off, and there's his Test career probably done. Certainly in the short term, maybe in the long.
Elsewhere, there are returns for Jack Leach and Rehan Ahmed. No real surprises there. They both bowled well in Pakistan in 2022. I think it's worth reminding ourselves of that tour, just how smart Stokes was in the field. They sort of, when the ball was older but not reverse swinging, they just put the game on pause, and that's where the spinners came in. So Leach just bowled dry for ages, actually quite defensive fields compared to what we've seen Stokes do with spinners elsewhere. So those guys, I think Leach has a massive role to play. He's obviously in really good form at the moment. And the uncapped Bryden Carse is in. He's a similar profile, I guess, to someone like Ollie Stone. He bowls, he's probably slightly bigger than Ollie Stone. He bowls quickly, high 80s, and I think quite importantly, his batting's really come on. So he averages 60 odd with the bat in the last 2 years in the county championship. Would not be surprised at all if he plays. I think he would have definitely made a test match this summer.
Just very briefly, back on Wokes again. If you have Carse, Hull, Stone, they're going to go at 4.5, 5 and over. They're going to bowl a lot of 4 balls because they're constantly striving for wickets, and that's what Stokes wants. He puts a high price on wickets. He's prepared to give up all kinds to get wickets. That's how, as you say, he winkles out 20 wickets on flat ones when he's got no right to. So again, you need a bit of light and shade. It makes more and more sense the more I think about it that Wokes has to come into that side and be the foil to the big young quicks who are going to go at 5s.
And Katya, you mentioned the lack of spin bowling all-rounders, Rehan Ahmed aside. I think a big reason why the batting ability of the bowlers really matters in this tour is Leach is going to play, Bashir's going to play. Unless they turn up to a green seamer, you know that your 10 and 11 are locked in. You're not getting batting from your spinners, so the seamers must be able to bat. Anyway,
where is Archie Vaughan in this squad?
We'll get to Archie Vaughan. That's the end of part 1. In part 2, we'll talk about Moeen Ali, the first England-Australia T20 iron here from Cam Green. David writes in to say, I have a favourite Moeen Ali thought experiment, which is to imagine how Adil Rashid would have been regarded as a test cricketer if he'd had Moeen's test career. An attacking spinner, taking a wicket every 10 overs, i.e. comparable with Swan, able to get good players out when they're well set, good at mopping up the tail, consistently a match winner in the 4th innings, and as a bonus, able to change games with the bat from number 7 or 8 from time to time. No, he couldn't reliably hold down an end, but that's not why you pick a bowler like Rashid. If Rashid had done that, he'd be regarded as one of England's best, and we'd be asking why he only played 67 tests. But it feels like Moeen is still sometimes regarded as a batter who wasn't good enough to play as one, but managed to stay in the side because he could turn his arm over. When Moeen was first selected in the aftermath of Swan's retirement, there weren't any thoughts of him being a like-for-like replacement. England were looking for a spin bowling equivalent of Paul Collingwood, who could make runs at 6 and hold up an end long enough for the seamers to have a rest. Moeen was never that player, but what he became was so much more rare and special, and that's how he deserves to be remembered. I think that's a very good email, and I think sort of sums up Moeen's value really well. And I think he was often an undervalued player, but you're sort of hearing the tributes in the last week, you can tell how much his teammates really rate him. He was a great team man, immensely successful English cricketer, nearly 300 international games, won an Ashes, won 2 World Cups.
One of very few as well to make 200 to 100 test wickets and make 3,000
So
test
one
runs.
one of I think only 6 or 7. Only Swan and Underwood have more wickets as English test spinners. I always go back to last Ashes. England's number 3 went down, England's spinner went down, and they went, Moeen, can you do both? Having not played against the Red Bull for a year and a half. It's his 3rd retirement, so I'm not entirely sure if I feel as strongly as sad as I do about this one as the first few. And I think we saw this one coming, but sad to see.
I don't think he's going to lose too much sleep over the end of his international career. I think he's quite comfortable with all of that. Just very, very briefly on the Adil Rashid, it's the great unknown. It's the great, it's the great sort of enigmatic question really of this era of English cricket. Ed Smith is often derided, but it was him who saw the value in bringing him back into the side. And I tell you what, if he'd been properly backed, and especially if he played under Stokes, he'd have taken a lot of test wickets. And the point that David makes, that couldn't have been relied on to do a containing job, I think he could have done. I think in the context of the way that test cricket's gone, I think if he'd been 5 years younger and his shoulder was in good nick, I think Stokes would have tapped him on the shoulder and he said, okay, fine. And England would have managed him. And I think he'd have been a very successful test match bowler. And he would have been the first ever English leg spinner, certainly of this century, to really scrape the surface.
One thing I wanted to say on Moeen that I thought was quite interesting from this week, in his interview with NASA in the Mail and his interview on Sky, in both times he talked about how much he wants to be a coach. And quite often when players hang up their boots, they're quite vague about their future plans. But Moeen was like, no, I really want to be a coach. And Broad on Sky was saying that he thinks Moeen will be an amazing coach. Moeen was talking about how much he learnt from McCullum being in the dressing room last summer. So that's exciting. Moeen Ali, England coach, is something I can get behind. Katya, you were at the Utilita Bowl on Wednesday.
Not the.
Sorry?
It's not the. It's just Utilita.
So
you were at Utilita Bowl. Trust me. Talk to the ECB.
So they're rewriting
Don't look
grammar.
at me. Yeah, there's no the. It's just you go right into Utilita.
Okay, I'll bear that in mind.
You
when I
have
say
to.
the next bit.
You get in trouble. You'll never work again. You won't get your accreditation next year.
You were at Utilita Bowl
Correct.
on Wednesday. Katya, have a good time?
Brilliant. Yeah. Best ground in the country to get to.
Yeah.
Didn't have any difficulties. Chucked it down about half an hour before play started, completely out of the blue.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's such a weird series. It seems like a really odd series. You know, Butler's not there, Salt captaining, Trescothick taking over on the interim. It just feels like such a holding series. And I can't really get any enthusiasm up for it.
She's only been in the job 2 years.
There's a lot of there's a lot of bad cricket, and this just feels a bit like bad cricket, almost like it's England v Australia, but it's hard to summon any kind of
The weather
meaningful...
didn't help. Like,
No.
it was genuinely freezing.
It was
on
so
a
cold.
September.
It was so.
night.
I was waiting to be picked up afterwards. I had to wait inside because it was so cold.
So was the atmosphere flat?
It was very flat. It was really flat. And I don't think it helped that, you know, you're going there and you're kind of almost expecting England to get hammered by what is actually quite a good Australia side and an England side that
It's really good Australia
it's a
side.
really good
And
Australia
they,
side.
And they picked pretty much the strongest group possible.
And, you know, you can say this is an England side in transition, but I actually think this isn't far off what their best 11 would look like, even if they weren't in transition. Sam Curran came in, bowled really badly that over. That was it. Travis Head took 30 runs off one over and just banging it in short constantly. Flat track. Thank you very much. Into their side. It did. So the start was bad, but it did kind of get a bit better towards the end. I think Saqib Mahmood bowled really, really well. Coming back, Adil Rashid again always bowled really well. Bowled a lot of spin. It was great. That's my takeaways from trip down to Southampton.
I can get people up for this series. I think there's so much for individuals in this because England are missing a lot of players. The Test guys aren't back yet. We know Brooke will come straight back into the team. I think Jamie Smith will probably come straight into the team for the first time if he's available. England's white ball schedule means that those guys might not play much T20I cricket in the next 6 or so months. So that for someone like Liam Livingstone, who's given this extraordinary opportunity to bat 4.
I don't mind that. I'd say I don't mind Liam Livingstone at 4.
Is that because he's got a bit of a run at it?
Yeah, and I also think if you look at past performances on how he's done, he actually bats better when he's been at 5 or up the order. I think it's worth a go.
As in he has a bit more time.
Yeah, he has a bit more time. I think giving players like him more responsibility is actually a really good thing. You know, he's meant to be a senior player in England's side now. Give him that responsibility, move him up to 4.
But so the reason why I think it's an extraordinary opportunity is because Brooke and Smith are going to come into the side. And they've got to go somewhere. So for someone like Livingstone, this series is absolutely enormous because given how the last year or so has gone for him with the bat, it would be totally foreseeable that England make a change there. Similarly, someone like Sam Curran, who you mentioned did not go well with the ball at all. He's batting in his unfavoured number 6 spot. You got the 3 debutants, Bethel, Cox and Jamie Overton. You'd think Bethel and Overton in particular, there's a spot to be won as a finisher in that side, as someone who can chip in with a few overs. And the bowlers, you know, there's so many bowlers who are injured quite a lot, so you don't actually know what England's true pecking order is. They're all jostling for position under Archer, basically, in Topley, Mahmood in particular. There's a real chance for a few guys here to sort of press a serious claim to be in the first choice plan. There's a World Cup every 2 years, so you're never that far away from a World Cup. And you know, someone like Darren Milan, he would murder a series like this. You know, no one's quite sure why this series is being played, and he would put forward a case he just couldn't ignore. And I guess there are a lot of players in this team. Will Jacks, for example, still not really cracked it at international level, and
Far from it. His struggles are becoming bigger and bigger.
And he's played a lot of international cricket as well. So I think from an individual, I completely get your point. As if you're there as a punter on a Wednesday night and it's really cold, you're probably not that bothered about how Will Jackson.
Yeah, it was actually really fun. There was no noise when Travis Head hit these enormous 6. I was watching this going, this is amazing. No noise whatsoever from the crowd. Looks like he's playing cricket on easy mode, you know. And he's
a phenomenon.
He's ridiculous. Yeah.
I know that we're on a new structure schedule put together by our producer. We've got times, which is terrible, next to every segment. Can I just ask you, if there was a World Cup starting tomorrow and everyone was fit, T20 World Cup, men's T20, and everyone was ready, you assume Salt and Buttler open the batting, who would you have batting 3 and who would you have batting 3 and 4? Who are your middle order?
I'd go Buttler, Salt, Brooke, Curran at 4, Jamie Smith at 5, Livingston at 6, Bethel at 7.
Katya?
I'm still going with Jacks. I still say he's going to break it at 3 with Buttler and Salt up top. I would have Brooke at 4 and I would have Livingston at 5. Not sure about the lower order, but that's what I'd have.
Interesting.
Yeah, so from my point of view, Curran is a weird one there. That's sort of because he's left-handed and it's very right-handed otherwise.
I'd have Duckett at 4 for the same
so
reason.
Yeah, so
I forgot about Duckett.
For me, it'd be Curran or Duckett, basically, at 4.
I'd have Brooke at 3 for the next 5 years, personally.
I think you need to get Smith in. Smith was totally ridiculous against the white ball this year.
From around that position as well. Often came in with 7 or 8 overs to go for Surrey.
He can whack spin.
Yeah.
And Livingston's a difficult one because I agree with what you say. I think he is more suited to bat 4, but there are better players to bat 4. And for me, he has to stay in the side because his bowling's really effective. Over quite a long time now, he's been a really canny option with the ball.
But that's my point with Livingston. If you have to have him in the side because of the role he plays, then you have to give him the best chance with the bat because he's the kind of player you can't really...
But do you have to, though? Because what if... Because I agree with what Phil's saying, that your match winners bat in the top 4, and I don't think... I think Livingston's a good player. I don't think he is Brooke Smith level.
No, I agree with you. Perhaps then this isn't a T20 World Cup 11. This is the order that you back in the run up to that and hopefully see if it pays off, and it could be. But, you know... I'd
bat him 11.
Okay, go on
then. Travis Head's really good, isn't he? I think he's the best all-format player in the world at the moment.
He might well be. He's certainly one of the most likeable. What a lovely cricketer he is to watch. The expressions on his face, the way he goes about it. Apparently he's hardly hit a ball. Like Cam Green's hitting 1,000 a day. Travis Head turns up, he hasn't played cricket in a while, just goes out and plays like that. Just remarkable player. He can hit anything out the ground. That's the beauty of it. He was brought through as a 17-year-old South Australia as an absolute prodigy and was captain at 21. And then it took him about 8 or 9 years to really nail it.
Do
And
you remember he had a stint at Sussex and averaged about 8?
yeah. So when he came over here to play in the Ashes, everyone's saying, "Oh, well, he can't do it in England." Yeah, he can. He's a remarkable cricketer, and I think you're probably right. He is at the peak of his powers. Plays all 3 formats, opens and bats 5. That's the dream. That's the dream combination. That's what the best players in the world do, and he's doing it time after time in all kinds of conditions.
Yeah, averages more than 40 in Test cricket. He's easy in the top 3 or 4 openers in the world in ODIs, and his T20 game has totally transformed. Like a lot of Australians, actually, before this year, didn't play that much of it. Like didn't play in these leagues, went years without playing in the IPL. But this year he's sort of taken it seriously for the first time and averages 41 and strikes at 181. In the history of T20 cricket, only Andre Russell has struck at a higher strike rate in calendar year.
Is that right?
That was his crazy year in 2019, where he was the best player in the world.
What did come across from watching him at Southampton actually was I kind of had the feeling about him last year that he was almost like having, fun, doing it for fun. Oh, this form will end at some point. He's got that aura around him now that the great players have of like, you can't bowl that to me.
Yeah.
You can't bowl that to me. I'm going to whack you out of the park.
Yeah.
And that kind of shows the trajectory he's on. This isn't form as such. This is just, he's an incredible all format player.
It's the pickup, isn't it? It's the leg side pickup from basically any kind of length. And only the best lefties have that. De Kock has it in white ball cricket, and that's what makes him so dangerous in those early power play periods.
I saw someone saying that with Head, what makes him particularly difficult to bowl to is like a right arm seamer. Is the way you're trying to get him out is the ball that's just across him that he sort of prods at. But he is so good if you offer any sort of width. A little bit like peak Bairstow. When Bairstow was at his very best at 2018, 2019 in white ball cricket, I don't think people really knew what to do, where to bowl at him. I think Head is quite similar at the moment.
There's a Toby Radford, internationally respected batting coach, been involved with international teams, county teams all over the world. He's writing a thing for WCM about how basically left-handers have it easy. Left-handers. He's doing it very respectfully and from a coaching technical perspective, but essentially there are certain advantages that lefties have that other players don't have. Now that will be very much through a modern lens, but that's been the case forever. Players from the 50s saying burn them at birth if they're left-handers. They shouldn't be allowed to play. There are certain angular advantages that left-handers have, and especially I think in white ball cricket, with 2 men out and all the rest of it, the good ones are almost impossible to contain. And he is the best of the current crop, I would say, if you bear in mind that Root's not playing one form of the game, and Smith's falling away, and Williamson has his injury problems, and I'm not going to get to Virat because, I know where some of our audience come from, so we'll leave that alone.
Anyway, next up a chat with Cam Green, who at 25 is established across all formats for Australia and has been for some time. He was absolutely lovely. We covered his love of West Ham, his summer interrailing across Europe, his openness to potentially opening the batting this winter against India, managing a hectic schedule, learning when to say no, and much more. So we've got a very special guest on the show today, Radio ambassador Cam Green, who's currently in England to play England in an ODI and T20 series that's coming up shortly. But Cam, you're quite excited to be in England just because you're a big Premier League football fan and in particular a West Ham fan. How are you an Australian and West Ham fan?
Yeah, basically the other half of my family lives in East London, and they've all supported West Ham. So yeah, I thought I'd jump on the bandwagon there. There hasn't been much to really enjoy. I think, we probably won I think it was the Conference League a couple of years ago when I was actually in England for the last Ashes. So, so that's something to enjoy at least.
So your presence in England bodes well for West Ham. Have you got a favourite West Ham player, past or present?
Yeah, I think I've watched a lot of highlights of Di Canio. Enjoyed what he used to do. And if there's any chance to say hi or meet him, I'd love to do that.
Nice. You've just been up in Scotland. I was up there for the first game. Very different environment to playing at Lords for people who didn't watch that series. The series is held at Grange Cricket Club. It's literally a club ground, a very beautiful club ground, but a club ground nevertheless. What was the experience of playing for your country at an environment like that?
Yeah, I think it's a very different environment to what we're used to. I think, yeah, we're obviously so used to big stadiums where, it always feels like they're a bit of added pressure, but I think it's always great to kind of start off your, UK trip, kind of going to Scotland, getting on the time zone, but also playing some really good cricket as well. So, we absolutely loved our time in Edinburgh. Obviously, it's a beautiful place to visit, but also to play cricket. So, yeah, we loved our time up there.
Before the tour, you had for you what was a pretty long break, no cricket in July and August. Was that a welcome time off?
It was, yeah. I think the last 2 years has been pretty hectic, and I think, I've probably had a week, maybe two max, breaks in between, 2 or 3 months of cricket. So, I think we all needed a break, and I think we're all making the most of it. I think, a few guys went and played in America, but then they were guys that knew they're going to have a break after. So I think, we're all ready and, looking forward to the summer ahead, basically.
How did you spend your time off?
Yeah, I actually went to Europe. I think when you're contracted at 17, that's normally when you go to Europe and enjoy Europe for the first time when you're an Australian. So I kind of missed that boat, and kind of this kind of came up, obviously out of nowhere. And I think my girlfriend had been to Europe a few times, and she was keen to go somewhere else, but I was like, no, that's peak Europe time. You have to go. So, next time we'll go somewhere else. But had a great month in Europe.
Identifying on what you described it as quite a hectic period. Once you're identified as an all-format international player who also plays in the IPL, there are very few chances to take a break. How much of a challenge has it been to manage your schedule over the last few years to keep yourself feeling as fresh as you can be?
Yeah, it is very tough. I think you make the most of the breaks when you can get them. I think, sometimes you can miss a game here or there to kind of mentally refresh, just so you're not switched on the whole time. But it gets pretty hectic when you're away from home for 11 months of the year, basically. It takes a while to kind of get used to that, the feeling of being away for so long. I think you kind of do it in stages. So when you're 18, you spend a couple of weeks away from home playing maybe a under 19 Western Australian carnival, and then you work your way up to the main team where you're away for maybe 3 weeks, and then for the Australian team, you're away for 2 months at a time, and then you get pretty used to having test tour to India with an IPL on the back of it, then straight into an Ashes. So you're away for about 6 months. So I think you just get slowly used to being away from home for slightly longer periods of time, and it gets easy that way. So that's kind of how you have to deal with it, I guess.
Do you think there's too much cricket? In England, the schedule is something we talk about loads, and players have often voiced that there is too much cricket. Do you think that something should be done about the schedule and ensure that players like yourself have longer periods of rest that are sort of guaranteed each year? Yeah,
it's a tough one, because there's so many important series that come up, and you got to kind of pick and choose which series to play and which series to maybe have a rest. So I know the England domestic schedule is ridiculous from what I've heard. I think they play a 1-day game, have a day off, and then play a 4-day, and then straight into a T20 the day after. Like it's pretty ridiculous for those domestic players. But I think the Australian coaching staff do a really good job of trying to break it up as best they can. But at the same time, it's tough to do that. So we try our best, and maybe there is a bit too much cricket, but that's the unfortunate nature of some. Like, you play cricket in the Northern Hemisphere in the summer, and then it's summer straight after in the Southern Hemisphere. So, unfortunately, with cricket, you can't do much about it.
I guess in your case, because you were playing for Australia at such a young age, it's very different to, someone like Ben Stokes, for example, who's been very firm at certain points in his career, almost establishing boundaries. But he was established enough at that point for that to be a slightly easier conversation to have. Do you think, looking back, there might have been times when, you might not have been 100% fresh just because of how long you'd been on the treadmill for?
Oh, for sure. I think I'm starting to get to that point in my career where I might find a voice to say yes or no to a couple of series. But at the same time, I think I've been, maybe a bit of a fringe player for a while. So, you never want to say no to a tour, or when you're playing for Australia, it's the greatest honour, and you never really want to say no. But there's definitely at certain times when you have to pick and choose. You have to, say no and have a tough conversation, just so you're better for the next series. So I'll probably look back at the last Ashes in England, It was straight after a test tour to India, which is pretty demanding, straight into my first IPL. Then I had 1 day at home and then went straight to the Ashes and the World Test Championship. So, that's 6 months away from home with 4 months in India and 2 months in England, which is probably more renowned as the tougher tours. That was pretty demanding. Something I'll probably have to keep on top of in the future, I'd say.
Looking forward, one of the biggest talking points around the Aussie team over the last year or so has been the batting order. You can't go a day without some former Aussie great giving their view on who should bat where. You've been moved up to 4 recently, and it's gone really well for you. Is that your preferred position? Is that the place where you think fits your game the best?
Yeah, I think there's about 3 or 4 guys that I'd say number 4 fits them the best. That's just the nature of international cricket. I think everyone grows up batting in the 3 and 4 spot their whole career. And yeah, it's only when you get to Australia where you're like, gee, Steve Smith's pretty good number 4, and so is Travis Head. Marnus could do it. Obviously I've played in that position my whole domestic career. I think that's the unfortunate nature of it. You kind of fit everyone in, and not everyone can bat 4. So I think we've got to wait and see. Yeah, I'd say it's totally up to Steve. I think he's earned the right to choose where he wants to bat, and whatever happens, I'm happy to move around for him. I think he's obviously great at the game, and he's earned the right to pick where he wants to bat. So look forward to see what he decides to do.
And would you be open to opening if that chance presents itself?
Yeah, 100%. I think you always want to put your hand up to play for Australia, and I think opening will be a difficult one, but surely something I won't say no to. So I think we have to wait and see what the selectors decide to do. But at the same time, I was open to do it about 6 or 9 months ago. So we have to wait and see.
I guess what's slightly different to you compared to Smith, Labuschagne, and Head is your bowling. Is that something that you find perhaps trickier to balance if you're batting high up the order and bowling a lot of overs? Yeah,
that's also another thought we've got to have as well. I think I've done it a couple of times for Australia in T20 cricket. I think I bowled in India. I bowled the 20th over and then had to open the batting, it was a pretty tough ask. It's obviously that's going to be another consideration. I know Shane Watson used to do it, and I'm not too sure if his overs, went down as he decided to be an opener. So, another discussion point, I guess.
You've got 2 huge home summers coming up back to back. Firstly, India, who've got a brilliant recent record in Australia. Is there a real hunger for you guys to almost right the wrongs of that previous India tour in particular?
Yeah, 100%. I think we always look forward to those big tours, and I feel like we're versing India or England every single year. So, I think we're obviously looking forward to it. We know they've had a lot of success the last few years, and that's due to having a very good team, which they've had. We've just not got it quite right now. And so, we're obviously very keen to make it a bit of a fortress again in Australia and build that back up. We know they've got a lot of confidence when they're going to come over, but so do we. I think we're playing some great cricket as well, and our team's pretty settled at the moment, playing some really good cricket. So, I'm sure it'll be another great series.
We're talking about how hectic your schedule was when you first got into the Australia team. I mean, going back to it, the other thing was COVID, right? Looking back now, how weird was that time? Because for you, I guess compared to someone who might have been slightly older, you wouldn't have had that much international cricket experience to compare what the COVID time was. But now with a bit more time to compare it to, how do you reflect on that period?
Yeah, it was a very weird time. I certainly know it would be a lot easier in my position than maybe someone who'd played in a normal Australian lineup and then been affected by that, because I kind of got thrown to the Australian team. We weren't really allowed to go outdoors. I had to hang out with everybody. I had to get to know everyone at a pretty close level, because that's all you can do all day. So I think in a funny way, I'm pretty thankful that it was like that. There was no one from WA, no one from my domestic team that was in the Australian team. I think I was 21 and the next youngest might have been Marnus at 26 or 27. So I was kind of in the deep end, but I got looked after really well. I think they obviously, everyone in the team kind of knew the position I was in, kind of by myself. So they all put me under their wing and really looked after me. And that obviously made me create a pretty strong friendship with everybody. So in a weird way, I'm pretty thankful for it.
What was it like coming into an environment full of, so many greats of Australian cricket? There were lots of guys who you shared a dressing with at the start who you'd have grown up watching, Smith, Warner, etc. They'd been playing for Australia since you were a kid.
Yeah, it's obviously certainly very weird. I think, yeah, but also you're blown away with their skill set, and you just can't believe you're sharing a change room with them. And that brings a lot of pride in yourself that you've done really well to kind of earn that right. And to be able to call them friends is a pretty crazy thought, from a 15, 16-year-old, to think, you're really good mates with Steve, and if you called him, he would pick up the phone and you'd have a good chat. So I think that just brings a lot of pride, and pretty thankful that I've been able to share a changing with some of the greats of the game.
And from a purely cricketing point of view, what have you learned from sharing a dressing room with someone like Smith, for example? One of the greatest players to have ever played the game. What have you learned from sharing a dressing room with him over the last few years?
Yeah, I'd say how ruthless he is. Just keep scoring runs. Even though he scored 32 Test hundreds, broken so many records, I think he's so dedicated to his craft and has so much pride in his work. So I think that's probably the main thing I've learned from someone like him. That he's not just ready to dwindle. He's really keen to keep pushing on and score more runs and win more games for Australia. And I think kind of that hunger that you see from someone who's achieved everything that needs to achieve is pretty special to see.
You're here for a pair of white ball series on ODI cricket in particular. How does that fit into your long-term plans? I mean, there are just so few opportunities for players like yourself to play 50-over cricket. I mean, a lot of the England squad for this series is extremely inexperienced. With a lot of new faces there, at least. A lot of these guys, they go straight from playing the Blast, then into the 100, then playing for England. So there's no space to play 50-over cricket. I think Bethel, who's in the squad, I think might he barely played 50-over cricket. Same with a couple of other younger guys.
Yeah, I feel pretty sorry for them. Obviously spoke about it earlier about their domestic schedule and how ridiculous that looks. I'm not sure how we would put up with it in Australia. I know we've got a lot less teams diverse, so there's going to be less games and a less hectic schedule. So,
but is it more generally for you personally though? 50-over cricket. How does that, when you're balancing so much already, how does that fit into your long-term plans almost? Because T20 cricket, there's so much of it. There's a central T20 thing every year, even if there's not a World Cup in the IPL. Test cricket, players, broadly even now still refer to it as the pinnacle of the game. ODI cricket is almost like the middle sibling almost, the one who gets forgotten a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of caught in a weird spot at the moment. Obviously, T20 cricket's gone to another level the last few years, and obviously Test cricket, you try and hold on to that, and everyone kind of knows that's the pinnacle, and that's the one you take your most pride in. So 50-over cricket's probably the one that does take the back burner if you do want to rest. I think Pat Cummins, there's obviously a few guys in that team that would be there if it's a Champions Trophy or a World Cup. That's probably the time when you do take the break. You decide that, obviously I love playing for Australia, but I need a break here, and 50-over cricket's normally the one that you do it in. So, it's an unfortunate thing that, but also it's a weird one because everyone wants to win a World Cup. It comes every 4 years. I think, when you look back in your career, you look back at the World Cups that you won, and that's certainly what it's been like in the past before the World Test Championships come in. So, it's a really weird one, and I'm not too sure where 50-over cricket's going to be in 10 years' time, but at the moment, you kind of got to work through that. If you decide to play it or have a rest, is probably in 50-over cricket, unfortunately.
I know we've talked about there potentially being too much cricket, but would you consider a stint in county cricket? There's a rich history of Australian players coming over. Obviously, Marnus, Smith, Lyon's been over this summer for Lancashire. At Surrey, Sean Abbott, Spencer Johnson as well. Is that something that you'd like to maybe do one day, maybe before an Ashes series?
Yeah, 100%. I've always wanted to play county cricket. I think there was a half chance a few years ago to come over, but I wasn't bowling quite at the time. So I think, if anyone was going to get me over, it was as an all-rounder. So kind of missed the boat there. But if there's ever a time in the future, I'd love to come over and kind of experience it. Obviously, England's unreal to be in the summer. I've heard so many great things about it. So Absolutely, I'd love to, but yeah, I think the unfortunate thing, it kind of slots right where you either have a break or go to IPL. So yeah, if there's ever a year that does kind of work in beautifully, I'd love to come over.
And just finally, lots of fresh faces in the England squad. One very exciting fresh face from an English perspective in the Australian squad is Jake Fraser McGurk. This is predominantly an English show, so there'll be a lot of people listening to this who haven't watched Jake in action. For those who haven't seen him, what should they expect?
Yeah, no dot balls. If he's ever going to be a dot ball, it's through a swing and a miss, basically. I think, yeah, he's a guy that I kind of turned the TV on to watch BBL. Yeah, I didn't really get to know him. I got to know him a few times. We went to India together when he was about 17, 18. Yeah, real fresh face. Obviously, had that aggression, but not to the level that he has now with his cricket. Yeah, he's the reason I turned the TV on to watch IPL, to watch Delhi play. Yeah, I think it's just really exciting, and yeah, can't wait to see what he does for Australia. And we obviously know the talent he's got, and yeah, I'm sure he has a very bright future for Australia.
Players like him and Travis Head seem to be changing the way T20 cricket is playing. Do you think there is a change in what players almost think is possible to achieve in a T20 game? We were talking a couple of days after Travis Head broke world record for most runs in a power play.
Yeah, I think he's been doing it reasonably consistently for the last 6 months, Travis Head, and I think it's absolutely incredible to see what he was doing for Sunrisers. I think they scored 130 in their 6 overs in India, and obviously broke the other day 103 in the power play versus Scotland. I think, yeah, obviously guys like him are probably the best in the world at the moment at what he does. And yeah, thank God he plays for Australia. It's been beautiful to watch the last 3 or 4 years, and yeah, long may that continue. Travis
Head is a very good timer of the ball. Speaking of time, Cam, you were an ambassador for Rado. Do you want to show the YouTube viewers your Rado number? Very nice, very nice. And you're recently a Rado partner.
Yeah, joined about 3 or 4 months ago. Yeah, obviously Rado's got a really rich history in Australian sport. Yeah, sponsored Brett Lee back in the past, and they've got Ash Barty on at the moment. And yeah, hopefully I can continue their really strong name that they've got in the world of watches, and yeah, hopefully we can have obviously a great partnership together.
Awesome. Well, cheers for coming on the show, Cam, and best of luck in the series against England.
Thanks so much. Cheers. Thanks so much for having me.
Rado is the official timing partner of the England and Wales Cricket Board. Rado are known for the unique design of their watches and use of innovative materials. Experience West Indies versus England in the stunning Caribbean. Sit back, relax, and let Gullivers take care of everything while you enjoy world-class cricket in a tropical paradise this autumn. Gullivers have toured the Caribbean 5 times in the past 3 years, meaning they know the islands inside out. They're experts in creating unforgettable trips, ensuring you get the best value with exclusive perks like official match tickets, hand-picked hotels, flight and transfer options, exclusive cricket evenings, dedicated tour managers, welcome drinks, and a tour group dinner, and so much more. Don't miss out on this dream getaway. Secure your spot today. Visit gulliverstravel.co.uk. Next up, the County Championship. Phil, was this the greatest cricket match ever?
According to you, it was.
It's up there.
So that's what you said before we came on air. So come on, talk me through it.
So the thing about the great Red Bull games are that you go back across all 4 days and there are momentum swings, and you look back at periods of play like, oh, if only that went slightly different. So Headingley 2019 is a classic one, in that I think a lot of people sometimes get carried away by amazing finishes. You go, oh, what a game. And it's like, well, it was actually rubbish for 4.5 days and came to life for a fun hour at the end. Whereas this game was genuinely brilliant from start to finish. Day one, Tom Banton, who has had an extraordinary summer. He's still only 25. We talk about England's white ball squad. I would not be surprised at all to see him back in it quite soon. Hadn't had much of a Red Bull career. He's averaging 50 plus for a team that might well go on to win the championship. Scores a brilliant first day 100. Somerset look like they're going to put on 450, 500 out the game. Then they have an almighty collapse. Suddenly they're 370 all out. Surrey with a different look about their team this week because of the numerous absentees. Sort of battle really hard to get into a good position. 170 for 3. The young guns, Ryan Patel and Ben Geddes, doing good work for them. And then they collapse as well. And then Tom Curran scores, in his first game in 2 years, scores 86 off 75, gets them to parity. Then I haven't even mentioned Shakib yet. Shakib's in, by the way, for one game. He's taking lots of wickets. Him and Jordan Clark basically bowl Surrey into position where it looks like they're only going to be chasing 110 to effectively win the championship.
Well, they wouldn't have got that anyway.
Well, and then you got the added complication of Tom Banton rolling his ankle in the football warm-up earlier in the morning. So he's, on the stream all day they're showing Banton in crutches. He's like, no way is he going to come out to bat. He comes out to bat number 11, scores 46 on one leg. Some of the most watchable cricket you'll ever see. He played one totally absurd reverse sweep without moving his feet at all.
It's because he couldn't
move his feet.
Couldn't move for love nor money. It was truly the most gripping passage of play I've seen in English cricket in years. Honestly, it was utterly compelling, and you could not take your eyes off it. You were open-mouthed watching it because you hear about players being injured and then coming back in. They're still able to function. He couldn't. He couldn't walk from one end to the other at the end of the over. He was one-legged completely. And so there's this passage of play against Shakib, who's obviously turning it square because the pitch has turned from start. And he bowls 2 in a row, and Banton with one leg prods forward best he can. It fizzes past the bat, and so he just thinks, okay, I'm just gonna reverse him, right out the screws. And they put on about 70 something.
Yeah, 71.
They put on 71 for that final partnership, either side of the close as well. So they resume the following morning, and you think, okay, well, firstly, his ankle's going to be so balked from this that he's not going to be able to get to the ground. If he does, he's going to be out within the first 2 minutes, but at least fair play, you managed to get 20 odd the night before. No, they just keep on going. It's absolutely astonishing to watch, really. And so I've got a mate who lives down in Taunton. He's not from there, but he's moved down recently, and he's become a member. And he's kind of been interested in county cricket, but now he's obsessed with it. So he's going along, and he says he's finally been accepted by the loyalists, So he's texted me all throughout, and he's still learning the ropes. So he's thinking, we'll be happy with a draw. And I said, no. If you get 200 lead, you'll win it. I think you got to back yourself on this. I think you'll win it. At one point, it looked like the game was dead, in that Surrey had kind of shut up shop. Folks and Sibley were going nicely.
With 65 minutes to go, genuinely, I think they were minutes away from a handshake. Somerset were not. There was no urgency. There was a period where they bizarrely had 2 drinks breaks in the space of 3 overs. Somerset, if you're pushing for victory and you seriously think you're going to win, you're trying to get through as many balls as possible. They had no interest because the game looked completely dead. Yeah. And then the collapse was 7 for 14 in an hour.
Right.
And Somerset take that final Surrey wicket with 3 minutes left on the clock. And we've not mentioned Archie Vaughan yet, son of Michael, 18 years old in his second first-class game.
Beautiful action, right?
Takes 5 in both innings, 6 in the first, 5 in the second.
People who haven't seen him, he's tallish, similar height and build to his old man, actually, and not a dissimilar action either. Very side-on, classical off-break bowler. But he was more threatening than Leach, especially in the first innings. There were bits I didn't see of the 4th innings, actually, not least because I thought it was done. So I only turned it on again when they were 7 down, I think it was, to see the finale. But first innings, he was more threatening than Leach. And then he also made 44 opening the batting against Dan Worrell on the first morning. So clearly a serious player. And around all the talk about this kind of next generation and this sort of the nepotism era, with Rocky and so on.
Nepo baby era.
Yeah. Farhan. Well, he's one to really keep an eye on. He looks like a real class cricketer.
Brilliantly.
But just on Banton, that 100, it's a statement knock, and fair play to him because he was pigeonholed as a white ball cricketer, and he's fought hard to become a red ball player as well, and that is a class knock against a test class attack. Hopefully we can see more of that over the next couple of years because the kid's got some serious ability.
Can I say what made that brilliant passage of play that you described a minute ago was that when Banton came in, it turns out Somerset actually already had enough runs, and that makes it absolutely all the better for me that the whole exercise in itself was gripping but completely pointless.
Well, but it wasn't though, because the extra runs completely changed how Surrey
Yeah,
played it.
yeah, I get it, but it's just nice to look at the scorecard
Yeah.
and go, actually, that could have been completely
Yeah.
pointless looking at the claps.
But what do you make of how Surrey batted?
Right. Well, I think there is a question
Right,
to raise there.
Surrey were basically content at going 1.5 runs and over. From their point of view, you win the game, championship is effectively done. You're chasing 214, 75 overs. The required run rate was less than threes at the start. And the pitch did turn, but it wasn't unplayable as Banton showed on the third evening and fourth morning.
Yeah, I was surprised. I was pretty sure there would be a result when they padded up because of the time in the game and because of the way the game goes and because of the way that Surrey play their cricket. But I thought the result would go for Somerset because of how much it had gripped and turned from the first morning. I watched basically all of day 2 when Leach and Vaughan were bowling.
Yeah.
And it was ragging square. Surrey did really, really well to get up. Obviously, Curran played out of his boots, but as you mentioned, Patel and Geddes played very, very well to get them into any kind of position because the pitch was crumbling and ragging a lot. So I thought Somerset would win it, but I thought that, look, I can understand Surrey's approach after they lost 2 early on. I can understand their approach. And look, 9 times out of 10, they saved that game from being 100 for 2 or whatever it was when Folkes and Sibley were together. 9 times out of 10, they saved that game. And you say, okay, it might not have been great to watch, but it's good, gritty, grown-up cricket. And they've basically iced the championship by avoiding defeat. 9 times out of 10, that works. But sometimes the game turns it on. And
But I think they were always vulnerable to what happened in that last hour. If you look at the profile of players they got on that side, are they players who have much experience doing this? You know,
sure,
Tom Curran.
But I think if they'd gone for it, someone would have had to have played as well as Curran played in the first innings. And I think there was more chance of them losing it if they'd gone for it than the way that they did play it.
I think my issue with it wasn't... So I don't think they start the innings being like, we're playing for the draw.
No, not at all.
I think they were playing their natural games. And someone like Sibley, actually, I thought played brilliantly. I think he just played the ball. He played how what was coming out of Vaughan and Leach's hands, played the pitch on merit. And he batted slowly, but he hadn't completely closed his mind to run scoring. He struck at 30, which is obviously slow, but he wasn't just blocking the shit out of it.
It was Geddes, wasn't he? Who was 1 from
28, and then
28.
and Folkes 20 from 100.
I think they shut up after Geddes.
Yeah,
maybe even before Geddes came in. Possibly suddenly they were 40 for 2, having started quite nicely.
Yeah,
but again,
my issue was that I think they could have changed the batting order to put pressure on Somerset. So they were just letting Leach and Vaughan just bowl the same thing every over. They weren't very good at milking singles. I thought Gregory's fields were really good in that he had the bad balls were going for 1, basically. And Surrey weren't able to score ones off the good balls. So suddenly you're going at 1, 2 and over max. And I just think Curran should have come in at 4 or 5. Just like put pressure, like, as well as Vaughan bowled, he's 18 and he's not played much professional cricket. Put him under some pressure. He bowled some bad balls when Curran had a go at him in the first innings. And what happened was that when Folkes gets out, they had batted so slowly, Somerset had no worry that they were going to lose that game. So they could just go completely in the attack. And there weren't that many runs to work with from Somerset perspective. And Surrey didn't put any pressure. You know, there were 3 results possible at the start of that innings. It was too early in that innings that there were only 2. If that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. I just think that they would have been increasing the chances of them losing it by going for it. And I think 220 on a real ragger was going to be a big ask, especially when you're 40 for 2. So I don't totally dismiss the tactics. People will say, "Well, look at the final result," but they were also 3 minutes away from winning the championship.
Yeah.
So the bottom line from the neutral punter's point of view is it is on, right? So what's 8 points, 9 points?
It's 8 points difference.
8 points difference.
And
2 games to go.
If you look at the fixtures as well, I mean, Somerset, I think, are arguably favourites. Somerset go to Lancashire in the next round, have lost their last 3 games by an innings, and then the last round of games they host Hampshire. Surrey, on the other hand, host Durham and then go to Chelmsford. Those are 2 really, really tricky games, and 8 points is not There's not many. It's an 8-point difference between a draw and a win. So all Somerset need to do is win 2 and hope Surrey don't win 2, and the championship is probably Somerset's for the first time ever. Couple of other things from this game. Number one, Rob Key, managing director of English cricket, tweeted at the end of this game, "Wow, what a game. Wonder what ball they were using, by the way." And then he deleted it because obviously Key brought in the Kookaburra ball for 4 rounds this year. A lot of county coaches and directors of cricket didn't like that, including Gareth Batty at Surrey.
But Batty said it's like playing football without the offside rule.
Yeah.
Well, look, he's been trolling English county cricket for the last 3 years anyway. So
yeah, you've got to stand by your gloat. You can't be deleting that.
I thought it was just very funny.
Yeah, it's funny. It's
very,
fine.
very funny. The other thing I was going to say, and I'm reluctant to bring it up, but I'm going to, is that as amazing as it was, I think we should be quite careful in assessing the health of the county championship off the back of this. So a lot of people are very excited that 20,000 people were watching the stream at the end. I still don't think that's many people watching a totally free thing. It's great that the streaming exists, and it's great that many number of people can watch it. It's totally free. Whack it on YouTube. It's first versus second. It's as much context as you can possibly hope. You know, we should be aspiring for loads more. And there are loads of very fair criticisms that you can level at the English game for not promoting it. You know, for example, why don't you make a really big thing of this game on Sky the week before? ECB really really promote this game as much as possible elsewhere. Get the numbers higher. But I don't think we should be happy with 20,000 watching that. You know, that's an extraordinary finish. Totally free. Anyone could have watched it. And in the end, it's less than the capacity of this place.
You're 100% right. It's a sleeping giant, and still people aren't fully aware of this service. I think it's been a leap forward this year, but there's so much more to do. There's a really good thing in the upcoming magazine written by Sam Darling, or Darling. Don't know. Let's go with Darling. Anyway, he's good cricket writer and journalist who's been working, I think, on the Somerset stream, but certainly on 1 or 2 others as well. And he's written about it as well. There are loads of interesting developments being in the pipeline, but there's so much more that needs to be done, especially finding a way to finance it. And the ECB have a kind of standoffish approach to the streams. Clubs are in control of how they try and monetize them. But the sense really, from my point of view, is that you need to find a sort of central fund for it to try and cover the costs initially, and then, if you like, empower the clubs to try and find their own revenue streams on top of it. Because if you can really get these productions up to a high class, more cameras in the ground, better commentary, better graphics, better highlights packages, then you can really the game can explode. And this applies to the white ball stuff probably more so even than the red ball stuff. But it's all there for people. But there needs to be a kind of a unified joint effort to try and get it up to that level, because the difference between one club's output and another is quite stark at the moment.
Sorry, to be clear, I think the counties have done a really good job, but pretty much across the board, especially given financial limitations. I think it's more that they just need more support from bigger platforms, basically. The counties are really good at promoting their streams to the people who are already supporting them. But if you're someone who's a casual Test cricket fan and you like watching Test cricket, you'd love what happened yesterday. And I don't believe there's as much of an effort as there should be from the ECB, basically, to say, like, this thing's actually quite good.
Yeah, we say it all the time, right? It's mad that you can come down after tea for free and watch the best cricketers in the country playing cricket. You look at this game, there's so much. Shakib Al Hassan, one of Bangladesh's all-time greats, if not the greatest. So many players who've played for England or who are playing for England or have very recently played for England on a stream that's free to watch. Brilliant match. Should probably make a massive deal out of that.
No, I completely agree. Elsewhere in Division 1, Lancs' season went from bad to worse, as I mentioned earlier, losing by an innings for the third game in a row. Durham scored millions of runs. So David Beddingham scored 279, the highest ever score for Durham in first-class cricket. He put on 400-odd with Ackerman for the 5th wicket. He has 1,205 runs at 86 this season in the Championship, 600s. I think he's a modern-day Hick, Phil, in terms of like how dominant he is in county cricket. Quite a big guy, sort of murders bowlers who bowl at a certain speed. The guys who aren't quite test match pace. And his record for Durham over quite a long period of time is just ridiculous.
I think he's a better player than that as well. I mean, you're talking about Beddingham, right? Just for the record, because I was looking at something else. I got there in the end. Yeah, I mean, he's faced up well in Test cricket. I think he'll make good runs in Test cricket as well. I think he's better than that, but he's certainly a bully at that level. Yeah,
100%. As is Matt Potts, who took 9 for 68 in the second innings, 12 wickets in total. If you're looking for something for county fans to get angry about in the next week, I can almost guarantee the ECB pulled Matt Potts out of their game next week. Potts bowled 50 overs in this game. I don't think that's what the ECB were hoping for when they let him play a game. And with the Pakistan tour around the corner, I'm not sure they're going to let Durham play him, certainly in both games.
Stop the world, it's only a month before he has to play his next game. God, he can't play next week.
Well, it's more that he bowled 50 overs last week, and how do you make sure that he doesn't do that again? Is what the ECB, I think, will say.
I'd love to see that conversation with Brian Campbell, actually. I think that'd be a great one to watch.
Yeah. When is the first test, by the way?
7th of October.
Is it 7th? Oh, so it was
very
a bit later
soon.
Yeah.
3 weeks.
Yeah. Elsewhere, Hampshire and Kent finished in a draw. Essex beat Notts by an innings. But the big story around Essex this week is that they've been given a 12-point penalty that effectively ends their title charge for Rose Cushy's bat being a little bit too wide at the start of the season. Keith Fletcher, the Essex president, labelled the decision as absolutely stupid. Phil, you were on the radio yesterday. You phoned in to BBC Radio Essex.
That's how it was presented. For the record, folks, I did not phone in. I'm not quite that desperate. The Essex chairman or chair, Anu Mahindra, KC, impressive fella. He's been fighting fire since he's coming into the job. But his argument is, and I'll just quote you back, he says, his issue is with the apparatus for testing not being standard. Now, he says that the 4 gauges initially used to test Feroz Kushi's bat back in April, both at the ground and after it was taken away by the regulator, failed to meet the standard set in the MCC laws. So you've got one bat, 4 gauges, and only the 5th gauge, according to Mahindra, works. So the gauges themselves are of different measurement levels, right? According to the chair,
isn't that their one job for the gauges to be the same size?
Yeah. So we accept that finally, 1 month after confiscating the bat, it did not go through a 5th gauge that was the correct size. However, at that point, other questions then raised their heads. No shit. Sure. So Essex are furious. Keith Fletcher, as you say, has called it absolutely stupid. And they feel aggrieved that their appeal has been dismissed.
Yeah.
It seems like their argument is not against the law itself, because clearly you need some stipulations. Otherwise, you have a bat as wide as a door. It's not the law that is an ass. It's the ham-fisted and incompetent way that it's been executed or prosecuted. That's their issue. 12 points wipes them out of the championship. They would have only had not even a puncher's chance anyway, but that wipes them out for sure. And
12 points seemed absurd.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. So the precedent is what happened at Durham 3 years ago when they were docked 10 points for a similar offence. So the ECB's regulator or whatever the latest body is, they would argue, well, it's commensurate with that. But if their testing process, as going by what the ECB's chair, the Essex chair has said, is as flimsy and as open to criticism as it appears to be, then clearly they have every right to feel aggrieved. Let's just put it that way.
There's been an amazing background story to the summer. What's the story with Feroz Kushi's bat? Any
just
updates?
One thing on the bloke himself, this kid, right? He's given a bunch of bats by Gray Nichols at the start of the year. He doesn't walk around with a tape measure with a load of bat tape in his in his bag. And this kid's reputation has been affected and tarnished. And Fletcher alluded to this in his statement. He said, the kid's a good lad. He's done absolutely nothing wrong. The insinuation that he's cheated is a nasty and unfairly stamped black mark against his name. He wouldn't have thought for love nor money about the width of his bat, because he goes on what Gray Nichols have given him, and Gray Nichols, for their part, clearly they wouldn't have been trying to pull a fast one by giving Essex's reserve opener a bat that's a little bit wider and just hope to get away with it. So, you're talking about a matter of a couple of millimetres according to the 5th gauge out of 5. And Essex's championship run is done.
That's 12 points.
It kind of reminded me a little bit of Formula One and some of the penalties that you get in there for your tyre tread being, a millimetre too thick or whatever it is. And then the driver takes the penalty for it without having had any say or any inkling that would have been a problem. And it does seem, I think there's a crossover in that a lot of sport is very officious, and there's and I understand there are rules and the rules are there for a reason, and there is as Phil said, there's a reason that bats have a limit on how thick they can be. But sometimes common sense has to take over, and it feels like that in these kinds of officiating and rule stuff, there's never any common sense that's put in that's gone into Rose Cushy's bat's a couple of millimetres too big. Is that going to make a massive difference in the scheme of things? It's not. Why are they finding them 12 points for something so minor like that? It just seems ridiculous.
No,
and then when you take into context the other thing this week about the Gloucestershire pitch, where they didn't get any points penalties as well, that kind of, I know they're completely separate things, but it's to do with points and it's to do with deductions. That entire game was abandoned because of the pitch, because the umpires ruled that pitch was too dangerous, and they didn't get any penalties for that. And if that was correct, then how can it also be correct that Essex gets such a massive penalty for Rose Cushy's bat being too thick?
Yeah, I mean, the thing I was going to bring up was that Yorkshire were docked 48 points for being institutionally racist. So that's absurd. That that's the comparison. For Rose Cushy's bat being a couple of millimetres too wide is a quarter of being institutionally racist. Anyway, speaking of Yorkshire, they had Leicester 15 for 7 on the first morning of their game there. Ben Code 5 for 15 from 10 overs. Yorkshire well placed to go up, especially given that Middlesex lost at home against Gloucestershire. Sussex will likely join them in Division 1. They beat Glamorgan, 5th 100 of the season for John Simpson, who's had an amazing first year there.
One of the players of the year.
Definitely. And yeah, after a rough couple of years for Sussex, they're going well. Northampton won their first game of the season this week, a week after parting ways with their head coach, John Sadler. So penny for his thoughts. Yuvendra Chahal had an amazing game, taking 9 wickets in the game. It's finals day tomorrow. And remarkably, the first game is Surrey Somerset.
So Somerset are on for the treble.
Yeah.
I
Correct.
mean, that in itself is remarkable, isn't it? No. This might be quite dated by the time a lot of people end up listening to this, but might be done by lunchtime tomorrow.
Yeah.
But yeah,
September the 14th
is burgeoning
still live,
here.
yeah. Very hard to call for the second year in a row. It's an all-Southern affair on finals day. A little bit unclear with England availability, so I think Surrey are hoping that Smith, Pope and Lawrence will be available.
I saw Lawrence having a long net here yesterday, earlier this morning.
Okay. Against what colour ball?
It was an indoor net.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to give any more away, but the fact that he is in the mums and dads and tuning up would suggest that tomorrow he might be in that first team.
He's also still in London, though, not in Birmingham.
Yeah, but I mean, they all will be. I don't think they'd have gone up.
I know that Sussex are already there.
Right, yeah. I think Surrey probably do things a little bit different.
Yeah, I believe they will announce. It is a moot discussion because I think by the time the pod's out, Surrey would have announced a squad. But I believe Surrey are hopeful to have the 3 test guys back, but not the white ball guys.
It's deeply disappointing that Jofra Archer won't be seen.
Yeah,
and that instead he'll be playing
hugely
some broadly here today, gone tomorrow game somewhere on a Friday night rather than the biggest game that his club's played in years. That's really, really disappointing and lamentable.
No, I completely agree.
Got to find a way, right? Surely just don't play him on Friday night.
Yeah.
And allow him dispensation to go and play for his club
100%.
in a game that is absolutely essential to their immediate future. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Predictions? What do we reckon? I'm going Somerset, Sussex in the final.
Yeah, I don't see Gloucestershire because they've done so well to get there. Remember that they tied that game at the Oval to keep their campaign alive, then played brilliantly in the quarter-final to inch their way over the line in that one. If they were to win it, documentaries will be made on Netflix about it. So I don't see that happening really realistically. Sussex-Surrey final.
I agree.
Yeah, I think Sussex are an interesting one because if you go through their team, it's not necessarily that star-studded without Archer. But a couple of guys who haven't had a lot of success in white ball cricket before have had really good years. So the Aussies overseas, Dan Hughes is an amazing season. Tom Alsop, again, sort of a journeyman cricketer, been around the domestic game for a long time. He's had an amazing year. Ollie Robinson, we talked about him early in the show. He's been brilliant with the new ball. Tamal Mills, skipper there, overseeing quite a young side. He's done a really good job. James Coles, his development's really come on this year. So, yeah, they've been really good to watch so far in the competition.
Just for the record, I'm desperate for Gloucester to win it. You know, they're a great, great club. The way they beat Warwickshire in that quarter-final was really stirring. And you know, you're talking Sussex aren't a particularly star-studded side. All the same applies to Gloucester. It'd be amazing if they can pull it off.
No, I agree. There was a trend, and actually quite a wholesome trend, on Twitter this week. It was called Barclays Men, and essentially blokes in their 30s were tweeting out videos of Premier League football players who were quite average 15 years ago, but to the music of bands at the time. So, for example, you know, a 2-minute compilation of Kenwyn Jones headers to Kasabian, that sort of thing. So basically, some people were like, "Right, let's do this for cricket. What are the sort of T20 Blast equivalents that we can come up with?"
Go on then.
So you start with your overseas, and I thought Yasser Arafat and Alfonso Thomas, 100%.
Yeah. Colin Ingram with the bat.
Colin Ingram, he's almost too modern, you know,
okay,
because he's still around. Like Alex Wakely, Dean Koska.
Alex Wakely's a lovely shout. Similar.
Gareth
gene pool.
Andrew.
Josh Cobb is in the Alex Wakely gene pool. Yeah, lovely.
Yeah. Anyway, Jeremy Snape, obviously the original man.
The original Moonball.
Yeah, it's Jeremy Snape, Darren Maddy, Nixon. You know that sort of core group.
Yeah.
At the start. Yeah.
We clearly haven't given this much thought. Nayan Doshi.
Yes.
Nayan Doshi. Dan, put that back in. Nayan Doshi, star of the first T20 Blast Finals day.
I didn't understand as a kid why he wasn't playing for England. I was like, this guy's the best bowler I've ever seen. Elsewhere, Afghanistan's test against New Zealand was abandoned without a ball being bowled. There was no play for the first 2 days, despite it not raining at all on either day due to a wet outfield. Parts of the pitch were dug up to try and dry the outfield. First abandoned test match since 1998, the 8th in total.
Not much to say then, really.
Not a lot to say. New Zealand are playing Sri Lanka next week. I think that'd be a fun series in Sri Lanka. So New Zealand are a bit miffed that they don't get the prep that they thought they were getting.
There was also some weird stuff with the scheduling of that, right? In that there were a couple of other grounds in the mix. Greater Noida has never hosted a test match this before, and there were reportedly some rumblings about whether it should have been hosted there, whether the facilities and the drainage were good enough before the test match started. But because of the Indian domestic calendar and the T20 leagues that are being played elsewhere in places like Lucknow, that was kind of the place that it was able to be held. And also because Afghanistan have to play at neutral venues and India has been good in facilitating that at Greater Noida in the past, that was kind of just put there without a massive amount of thought. And apparently the Afghanistan players aren't massively happy about it being there with the facilities that are there. And they've essentially just been sitting around doing nothing for the last 5 days, despite there being very little rain on the actual times that Test match cricket was supposed to happen. So it's a bit of a farce, really.
Big time. India and Bangladesh are about to start a series. Exciting news. Rishabh Pant is back in an India test squad for the first time since his horrific injury nearly 2 years ago now. Interesting to see how Bangladesh do in India, given how well they did against Pakistan. And we'll talk about this more on the Women's Cricket Pod, but an extraordinary series between Ireland and England, where England dished out one of the all-time great maulings in the second game. And then in the third game, Ireland won it. So there's a lot of people on social media going, "Oh, why are these two teams playing against each other? There's such a discrepancy in standard, etc." But Ireland actually won the third game, so that was great. And Katya, you were saying at Utilita Bowl
Better.
on Wednesday, everyone in the press box had their eyes on that game.
Yeah, me, Lawrence, and Lizzie gathered round the laptop while Travis Head was belting it over the leg side. It was brilliant finish. Just very briefly, 3 wickets fell in 3 balls for Ireland. Needed 4 runs to win off the final ball of the match. Alana Dalzell comes in, only ball to face, smokes it back over Maddie Villiers, who was bowling the last over's head. Holly Armitage on the boundary running round, completely misjudges it, runs past the ball, sticks her hand out behind her desperately and tips it over the boundary rope after it's bounced for a 4. Amazing
Finish.
Brilliant.
What a week of cricket we've had. That is the end of today's show. Pretty long episode, and considering that this is the bonus episode in the week, we've done a lot for you folks this week. Cheers Katya, cheers Phil, and cheers listeners. We'll see you soon.